evening, and welcome to the 69-Minute Newscast, the show that promises 60 minutes of news, 9 minutes of sports news, esports news, and a happy ending. So, I was told by some critics last week that I was kind of dry and not very personable on last week's video, so we're going to fix that this time. So, we are going to change things up just a little bit here. We're going to go ahead and mute my phone, and then we're going to go ahead and go with the news from this week. So while Twitter has updated their Grok AI to Grok 3, unfortunately, everything that I was asking him to throw in here for the start of this week's news, which would be last Saturday, the 22nd, was something that he just pulled out of his virtual butt. So we are going to the New York Times, the paper of record, to find the stories, and we'll go ahead and comment on those because a lot of these I am familiar with from other stories throughout this week. So Trump plans to use the military sites across the country to detain undocumented migrants. They're going to be detained there. The worst of the worst are actually going to be sent to Guantanamo Bay to be offloaded there. And if they are somebody that even the home countries don't want back into their country, they will be detained in Guantanamo Bay. The fate of the Bibas family recalls trauma of October 7th, renewing fears of Gaza. The Bibas family, Hamas said that the children and the wife were killed in an Israeli bombing. However, when they received the bodies back, they actually found out that the children were murdered. There was no sign of bomb damage. It was only murder. These children were killed by Hamas. And the wife that they sent back, that was not her body. It was somebody else completely. So they're still fighting with that. No clue on whether Trump wants to go and drop a Moab. It worked with the Taliban. But we'll see. FDA firings decimated teams reviewing AI and food safety. There is a lot of stuff about the government laying off people. And I understand that layoffs are really bad. They are. I've been through them before. I've also worked for the government before. And I can tell you, as somebody who's worked for the government, a lot of people don't need to be there. They're there just to earn a paycheck and not really do their job. So by doing these layoffs, this is going to make it to where we can actually see, can this number of people do everything, or do we need to increase it a little bit and get some more people in there to handle the load? And it also allows us to really see what type of regulations have been placed upon the American public that we can just get rid of because they're unnecessary. There are a lot of burdensome regulations that are placed upon the American people that we don't need to have. So, Russia talks peace while troops threaten new region in Ukraine. So, let's go ahead and go into this story here because this is actually going to tie into one at the very end. So, Moscow forces are 3 miles from, I'm not even going to try and say that, a province they have never invaded. If they cross in, the advance would be a morale blow to Ukraine and complicate territorial negotiations. As the U.S. and Russia begin talks to end the war, Moscow is pressing its advantage on the battlefield by closing in on that word. I don't speak Russian or Ukrainian. One of Ukraine's largest regions and one with a major industrial base. So this right here, when it comes to the talks between Putin and Zelensky and the negotiations within with the United States being in the middle of it, as well as I believe it was there's a leader in the Middle East who said he would jump in and help too. There was one of the kings in the Middle East said that he would jump in and be a neutral third party where the talks can take place. I'll try and find that information and throw it in the comments or something later. But by Moscow pushing troops into this region before peace talks are going, that gives them kind of a foothold into trying to add this territory into what they get out of the negotiations. So once everything's signed, they're trying to gain more ground so they can keep more ground in the final negotiation. So let's hope that this doesn't further into this. So the next story for last week is going to be where they're talking about the Doge dividend. And somebody did the math on the Doge dividend. And if they were to do $5,000 to every adult American taxpayer, there are 262,083,034 American adults. That comes out to $1,310,415,170,000 that they would have to come up with to be, or have to save us to be able to give everybody a Doge dividend. And while that sounds really good, that right there is half of the interest that we owe on the national debt. So if we can get rid of that, that will help the country a whole lot. While I would love $5,000, that would be amazing. I could do so much. I could actually almost pay off one of my car loans with that. That'd be awesome. But paying down the national debt so that our children don't have to deal with that when they become adults, that is a far more important thing. So that is not something that happened. Let's go ahead and pull my Grok AI back up here. Pull it over here. Let's go to, I went through and I verified each and every story this time before I even started this. And like I said, Grok was having a lot of problems with the Grok 3. It was having a lot of problems actually determining what stories were from the right date. So I've spent probably the last 3.5 hours just going through headlines for the last week trying to get everything ironed out for this. I know that doesn't seem like very much, but I have been down with the back issue for a week and a half, and I'm finally up to where I can actually feel like doing stuff without falling over in pain. So sorry for not making it last week. I know this is just episode 2 of this. This is the second week, but it's also the third week. So last week was missed. I'm so sorry, but I was literally laid up in bed on painkillers, and while the show would have been entertaining, it would not have been the show I want. So the NBA trade deadline Steiner. So the Lakers trade Anthony Davis to the Knicks, shaking the 2025 season. Sorry, that just came out of nowhere. So what that reminded me of, and that's why I have this up, is this is something that's happened in the last couple of weeks. The Luka Doncic trade from the Dallas Stars to the Mavericks to the Lakers. So they did this on February 1st. Dallas Mavericks traded Luka Doncic, Max Keebler, and Markieff Morris to the LA Lakers for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a 2029 first-round pick. So they did this to try and get some younger players in because Luka is getting older. But it was so sad watching the Mavericks fans outside of American Airlines Arena holding basically a mock funeral for Luka Doncic. I felt so bad about that. And when I saw this, I was like, you know what? I want to go ahead and say something about that. I'm not necessarily a Mavericks fan. Baseball goes way too fast for me. I cannot follow it. Or not baseball, basketball. Baseball goes way too slow for me. I can't sit through it. But basketball, way too fast. I just can't keep up with it. My ADHD doesn't let me do that. I will sit there and just focus on somebody in the stands and just not even know what was happening in the game. So I wanted to go ahead and highlight that and say that I do, I feel for the Mavs fans. I'm so sorry that all this happened and that they got rid of Luka. I'm sure if Mark Cuban was still the owner of the Mavericks, that wouldn't have happened. I'm not much of a fan of Mark Cuban after him saying that Trump doesn't have any intelligent women around him. Have you met this press secretary, the last press secretary, the White House chief of staff, Tulsi Gabbard? Any of them? No? Okay. So, all right. So that's what happened last weekend. And then with I just wanted to throw the Luca thing in there. So last Monday, the Dow dropped 800 points with stock market volatility because of the threat of tariffs frightened the stock market in the S&P 500 index. It fell 1.6 on Thursday. That's now just 1.4% higher than it was when Trump took office in November. So it fell Monday too because of the threat of the tariffs coming in, which, if anybody remembers back to 8 years ago, whenever Trump took office, and he would sit there and use tariffs to help the country. What would happen is he would sit there and levy a tariff on, say, steel or automotive imports, stuff like that. And then what those countries would do that were being charged the tariff, rather than having to pay the tariff, they would just come here, open a factory, and that would create hundreds of jobs, sometimes thousands of jobs. And these tariff threats, with the way that they're downsizing the government, it's actually going to end up being a boon on the country, because these people can actually go into the private sector, into these different factories, these warehouses, these different firms, all the stuff that's going to be coming over here from overseas that would have been tariffed. And there's more jobs in the private sector now, and more are going to be opening up, so that these people can go work those jobs. And it's a net win for the country, because that means there's more people working. With more people working, there's more taxes coming in. With more taxes coming in, the more they have an argument for a flat tax, which is something I would love to have. Flat tax, great. It would work as you would have either a 10 or 15% tax on goods sold, or you would have a 10 or 15% payroll tax. That's it. Just one tax, everybody pays it, no matter what, done. So, and there's no opting out. There's nothing where you can say, okay, let me go through this loophole, that loophole. No, it is, if you work for an employer, you get charged tax. Or if you go shopping, you get charged this tax. That's it. There's nothing else. And then we could start doing like most other countries do over in Europe, which people... When people visit here, they talk about how when they go into the stores, they hate it where they go in and something says $2.99 and they get up to the register and it's $3.25 because we don't add the tax on the price. So anyway, so hopefully that can happen, and the stock market will understand. People will start to understand that when this happened under Trump the last time, interest rate fell down to 1.4%, and prices were low as well. Gas was, I think, $1.63 a gallon was the lowest I saw out here in Texas. Yeah, tariffs can be a good thing. Just sit back and watch. So let's go ahead and okay. So Japan's fusion breakthrough stunned the world. 10 megawatt fusion test promises clean energy by 2035, stunning global energy forums. Skeptics question costs, and X trends hashtag fusion future with sci-fi memes. So Doge is, while Japan is working on this type of energy over here, Doge is working on cutting billions of dollars in government waste for different energy programs, because it's actually been proven out that if the government subsidizes something, it goes at a snail's pace. But if the private industry that takes it on under their own money, such as Elon with, oh, goodness, I'm so sorry, Elon with SpaceX. In that case, it made it to where now he went from nobody wanting to work with him because he was just starting up and learning how to build and launch his own rockets, to now, without government subsidies, government contracts, yes, for different stuff, but without the subsidies, he's learning to reach out and grab ships coming down out of the air with chopsticks and gently land them. So that's the difference between a government subsidy and a free market. You leave it to the free market, innovations are going to happen like that. You do it under government subsidies, it's going to take forever. So, right, and on Tuesday, let's see, how much time are we in here? We're at, wow, a whole 15 minutes. Okay, we might get done with this newscast sooner, and then I'm really going to owe you one, or not. So, riots erupt in Greece over a train crash anniversary. So, there was a train crash in Greece 2 years ago today, in Athens, Greece, I believe. And it was not pretty. There was a commuter train that collided with I believe it was a freight train. And now, every year, there's protests that happen on that day, which is February 25th. Excuse me. Sorry, it happened in Tempe, Greece. The protests happened to argue the government's incompetence in this matter. As somebody who's also worked for the railroads, it is a very finely oiled machine. When we're talking about the railroads here in the States, you can drive down any country road, you can go in any city, and railroad accidents rarely, if ever, happen. The last one I remember happened under the Biden administration, which was, it was about 4 years ago now. That was the last U.S. one. There are occasional issues where a conductor will be going too fast and the train literally falls off the track as they go to a turn, which, human error, yes. This seems like both a human and a scheduling error. So, in Athens, Greece, protesters hurled petrol bombs and set fires to trash cans in Athens on Friday as hundreds of thousands of Greeks went on strike and took to the streets in nationwide demonstrations on the second anniversary of the country's deadliest crash. Now, this is saying it was today. Okay, well, I guess we're going over today's news. 57 people were killed when a passenger train filled with students collided with a freight train on February 28th, 2023 in central Greece. The accident has become a painful emblem of the perceived neglect of the country's infrastructure in the decades before the crash and 2 years since. So it's a passenger train filled with students. This is almost like a school bus hitting an 18-wheeler. The government hasn't done anything to get justice, says Chris Main, 57, a musician at the Athens rally. This wasn't an accident, it was murder, he said. In one of the biggest protests in Greece in years, public services and many private businesses were brought to a halt, and people poured into the streets of the cities and towns, chanting murderers against what they say were the state's role in the disaster. The government denies wrongdoing. Sounds a lot like the 2020 riots. A sea of people descended on Athens' Syntagma Square on the front of Parliament, where protesters spray-painted the names of the dead in red on the ground. The slogan, "I have no oxygen," that sounds like the George Floyd riots, a woman's last words, and a call to emergency services echoed the chants across the country. So anybody who is not familiar with the George Floyd riot, is where a police officer leaned with his knee on the back of George Floyd's neck while he was on the ground. I'm going to back up a little bit before that. As George Floyd was being pulled over, according to the passenger in the car, he downed an 8-ball of Coke and was very, very high. Um, when he, I believe that's what it was, or no, sorry, it's methamphetamine. And I believe he had, what was it? Anyway, he was really high. So when the toxicology screen came back, he had 3 times the lethal dosage of amphetamines in his system that would have killed anybody. So he was placed in a car. He said, I need to get out. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. So the officers let him out. He said, can I just lay on the ground? You can sit on top of me. I just want to I need to lay on the ground. So they said, okay. He laid on the ground. Officer put the knee on his neck. And then as they were talking, he passed. Unfortunately, this happened. They didn't realize it until it was too late to perform CPR. With the 3 times the legal limit amphetamines in his system, CPR may not have been something that would have brought him back, unfortunately. But anyway, so this sounds a whole lot like what that last person saying, I can't breathe. I'm not saying they were on drugs. I'm just saying that combined with, the riots with the bombs and all that right now, weird how stuff just kind of throws together. Anyway, clashes broke out in Greece's second city, Thessalonica, where a giant crowd choked the center and people released black balloons into the sky in memory of the dead. More than 80 people were detained and 5 were injured in Athens alone, authorities said. Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis, I know I just butchered that, center-right government, which won re-election after the crash in 2023, has faced repeated criticism by relatives and the victims of failing to initiate a parliamentary inquiry into political responsibility. The government says it is up to the judiciary to investigate the accident. In a Facebook post Friday, the Prime Minister said his government would work to modernize the railway network and make it safer. So that's good. The state is actually getting in there to try and make sure that everything works. Maybe they can talk to BNSF or one of the railroads out here to kind of help out with that. That night we saw the ugliest face of the country in National Mirror. He wrote, the night of the crash, fatal human error met with chronic state inadequacies. The safety gap that caused the crash has not been filled 2 years on. A state inquiry found on Thursday. A separate judicial investigation remains unfinished and no one has been convicted in the accident. Opposition parties have accused the government of covering up evidence and urged it to step down. Next week, Parliament is expected to debate whether to set up a committee to investigate possible political responsibility in the disaster. Protesters said they have waited too long. I kind of agree. I would definitely say that. So, hopefully by this time next year, they'll have had all of their issues ironed out and we'll be good to go. So, on Wednesday, on Tuesday as well, Trump pushes DOJ to overhaul Veterans Affairs. So Trump announced DOJ will slash the VA bureaucratic bloat by 25%, promising faster care for vets on X. Critics cut while hashtag vets first trends with wait times. Wait time tales. So as I've done a lot, someone who is also in the military and knows people who have to deal with military stuff. When Trump was in last time and made it to where veterans can actually see their own chosen doctor rather than having to go to the VA every time, that was a godsend for a lot of veterans. So hopefully that will continue on and they can go ahead and take a look at the mortality rate of VA doctors and also take a look at the success rate of diagnosis for VA doctors and try and get the ones out that aren't doing their jobs correctly. Because as someone who's had a lot of medical issues, especially with my spine, for 5 years I was a paraplegic, went through 11 different neurologists. Finally, number 12 looked at a 3-year-old MRI and said, oh, your spine's pinched in half. We'll get that fixed. And 11 other doctors, including 3 heads of neurology in 3 separate hospitals in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, could not find what the problem was. It was definitely an issue, and I really wish I'd kept better records of all of that, because I would be seeing if those doctors even had jobs now, as bad of a job as they did on me. But that's a lot of the work that our veterans get too. That's a lot of the stuff that our veterans have to deal with doctors that are really just there to practice and not actually get the job done right. They're not hiring the best, unfortunately. So, Veteran Affairs staffers denounce Office of Personnel Management email amid Elon Musk Doge push. People have no clue how this is impacting us. What that is referring to is the email that Musk sent out last weekend saying, please respond with 5 things that you've done this week, which is a pretty standard email that you get from a boss that actually wants to look over your shoulder and make sure that you're actually there doing your work and not quiet quitting like a lot of people do nowadays. So personally, I don't understand what the problem is here. I think every employer should be reaching out. Every manager should be reaching out to their staff saying, hey, just want to check in. What 5 things did you do this week? Because they should be able to list it off. Okay. So the latest OPM email telling federal workers to outline their accomplishments has roiled Washington. For Veterans Affairs employees who spoke to BI, the directive is more DOJ-related frustration. About 2,400 staffers from the agency have been fired in recent weeks. When Elon Musk announced last Saturday that federal workers would have to respond to an email detailing their work accomplishments from the past week or his termination, it was the latest move the White House DOJ's offices push to upend U.S. government. From watching the cabinet meeting that happened earlier this week, when Musk got out there to explain what he was doing with DOJ, how they were working with each of the departments and all of that, he got out there and said the email was literally just a pulse check to make sure that everybody receiving the emails actually had a pulse and 2 neurons to be able to respond to the email. Because what they're finding is, just like with Social Security, which I reported on a couple of weeks ago, having millions of people that are dead on their rolls, they're also finding that there are government employees who are not alive, who are filling employee positions. They're finding that there are government employees who've passed that are still getting checks every week because there's hasn't really been any accountability, and their families are still benefiting from these checks coming in, but they're not there, or it's fake people who were hired in. They did a fake interview. They pretended to be somebody else, got one of those little mouse devices that wiggles your mouse every few seconds to make it look like you're working, doing stuff like that. There were whistleblowers from the federal government saying a lot of people were doing that. They would get a device, they would set their mouse on top of it, and it would move their mouse every few seconds to make it look like they were working. Because if anybody checked in, they would see that their mouse was moving, so they were doing something. Their computer was awake. So then that was enough for them to say, yep, they're working, they're doing something. And they would leave them alone. And these people were getting paid our taxpayer dollars for doing nothing. So the Veteran Affairs Secretary Doug Collins, former Georgia congressman, said in a video last Thursday that healthcare for veterans would not suffer amid efficiency reforms, pushing back against what he said were whoppers of DOJ-related impacts on the department. Roughly 2,400 employees at the agency have been fired in recent weeks, including 1,400 on Monday. Several staffers at the Department of Veterans Affairs told DOJ's efforts have created a high level of uncertainty and stress within the department, tasked with providing critical services to the nation's veterans. So many people have no clue how this is impacting us. One VA social worker said, we spend a lot of time managing our staff's emotions with each OPM email. I fear people will begin to resign, and then our veterans are the ones who will suffer. A lot of this is while they may feel that that's something that may happen, a lot of this is actually put forth as a scare tactic to get people to stand up against the government to stop this so the veterans don't get hurt. But again, like I said before, a lot of the people who work for the government, while they may be hired in to fill a position, a lot of times that position, 3 people in that position can be filled by one person who actually wants to come in and do the job. So let's keep letting them do these cuts. Once they get to a point where stuff's not working, they'll start hiring people back in. So we've got to find out where that low point is so that we can find out what kind of savings we can have for the U.S. government. And I am so sorry, my dog is just snoring like crazy at my feet. So if you hear that on the microphone, I am so sorry about that. But anyway, so also in the cabinet meeting, they were talking about the Social Security Department. And they're also talking about the census that happens every 10 years. Rather than hiring 6,000 or however many people they would hire to do the census, pay them a salary, have a government vehicle for them, and have all these people doing everything, they figured out why not just move that in with a department of people who visit every American home every day of the year, except for Sundays. And they're going to move that to underneath the post office. This way, the post office, which has been facing a loss for many, many years, will actually start pulling a profit. Because by being able to do stuff like that, and by being able to take over jobs that we're not having to pay new people for every 10 years, then we can go ahead and keep a correct census, number one. We can see, by keeping a correct census, we can also make sure we keep congressional districts correct. The congressmen and the senators or congressmen that are dependent on, you have to have this many people in your district in order to have a seat. We can make sure that those are correct and those stay correct. And they can also, when a new child is born, they can deliver the Social Security form to them and pick it up, take it into the mail and send it off to the Social Security office to get done. They can also, when people turn 55, because they start getting those AARP stuff and all that, they can bring them the application for Social Security, or 65, sorry. They can bring them the Social Security, the Medicaid application, and the Social Security retirement stuff. So a lot of that stuff can be taken up by the post office, because it's almost literally just, okay, let's put one extra person at each post office that can handle this for the area, and then it's just one extra piece of paper that mail carrier has to carry with them. So I believe doing stuff like that is genius, and it also cuts back on the amount of money we're paying out to people, paying out to thousands of people. We can get those people into private jobs, into the private sector, so that they can be making more money and they can be paying more taxes, and that can be building the economy and building the GDP. So it's amazing, very smart of them to do that. So we're about halfway through our broadcast now. So let's see. So on Wednesday, Attorney General Chris Carr files an amicus brief supporting Trump's executive order on minor transitions, and that was Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr. And he filed, there we go, order ban. Carr defends President Trump's executive order banning federal funding for child sex change procedures. Attorney General Chris Carr has filed an amicus brief in support of President Donald Trump's executive order requiring federal agencies to stop funding sex change procedures for minors. The order was challenged by plaintiffs represented by the ACLU and Lambda Legal in federal court in Maryland. Children are not social experiments, they are not science experiments, and they are not political theories. They're children, and they deserve to be protected, said Carr. We have continued to take action in Georgia by fighting against transgender surgery for minors and taxpayer-funded sex changes, and we're proud to stand with President Trump so we can end this nonsense once and for all. So, on January 28th, Trump signed the executive order saying the United States will not fund, sponsor, promote, assist, or support the so-called transition of a child from one sex to another, and will rigorously enforce all laws that prohibit or limit these destructive and life-altering procedures. There is a growing movement of detransitioners in the country, and these are kids who at one point thought that they were a different sex, and their doctors, rather than doing any psychological workups or anything with them, they would just go, okay, we believe you, here's the drugs, let's go and schedule the surgery, and they started doing it. And you can follow, there's been a lot of reporting by Matt Walsh, a lot of reporting by Christopher Rufo, and others out there that highlight all of this, so you can check those sources out yourself. I've seen a whole lot of it, but there's also beginning to be more detransitioners coming forth, such as Chloe Cole and others, that talk about how they said, I think I'm trans, and the doctor's like, okay, let's get you on drugs. And it was immediate. There was no ifs, ands, or buts, because these children are millions of dollars to the pharmaceutical companies over the course of their lives. Because once you start a transition, if you continue on with it, you have to continually take drugs every single day to keep that going, or your body will revert back to its natural state. So, joining Carr in filing this brief are the Attorneys General of Alabama, Alaska, Arkansas, Florida, Idaho, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri. I've driven through there many times. It's Missouri. Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Texas, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia, and the state legislatures of Arizona. So you can get a copy of that brief from the law.georgia.gov press release on 2/26 of 2025. You can get a copy of that if you'd like to read it yourself. But yeah. So also, Dan Bongino, who is all the news sources are saying he's a podcaster, but he's more than just a podcaster. He was the replacement for Rush Limbaugh. When Rush passed, he wanted the show to go to Dan. So before he passed, he gave it to Dan Bongino. So he was the inheritor of the Excellence in Broadcasting Network, or EIB network, that Rush founded. But he is also a former New York City police officer and former Secret Service for Obama and Bush. So he's got experience when it comes to the government and when it comes to law enforcement. So he is now the deputy director of the FBI under Kash Patel. So they're going to work to declassify a lot of information that was classified, such as the Epstein files and the JFK stuff and the Martin Luther King files, all of that. Also, they're going to be working to get rid of all the corruption and everything that's happened within the FBI, like with the Russia, and all of that stuff. So they're going to be working to get rid of that too, and weed out all. They have actually gotten rid of several FBI agents who were part of that, and pushed them out of the government. They no longer have security clearances. I believe there was over 100 so far. So sorry about the interruption there. Let's get back to this. So Trump signed an executive order to expand DOJ's spending review powers. And in a newly issued executive order, the Trump administration has instructed the Department of Government Efficiency, the Elon Musk advised initiative, to reduce federal spending to create a centralized technological system in every agency to record contract and grant awards. As part of the ramp up of these systems, agency employees who approved individual contracts and grant payments will have to submit a written justification for their approvals. Agency heads will be able to pause and rapidly review any payment for which approved employees haven't just submitted a justification as part of the executive order. So what this does is this actually goes back onto Article 1 of the Constitution, where it actually says that Congress is supposed to be doing this stuff, which they're not. So this makes it to where the executive branch and Doge is an extra step in making sure that the government is not wasting taxpayer money and they're actually spending it wisely. Back in 2015, when I was getting really into politics and was really learning all this stuff, I kept saying to myself that we need a businessman in the White House. Because with Obamacare and all that stuff that was going on at the time, it was a disaster. The federal budget was getting out of hand. They were constantly having to every single year go, okay, we have to pass more money, have to pass more money. And it was just ridiculous. And then Trump decided weeks later that he wanted to run. And it was finally, I was like, yes, thank goodness there's a businessman that's actually getting in here. And in his first term, he had surrounded himself with career politicians, hoping that they knew their way around and would help him and get behind him. But it turns out most of them were actually just getting in his way and doing everything they could to undermine him so that he wasn't actually getting things done. But now, with Trump there, with Elon there, both people who are billionaires, yes. And before you say, well, Trump was given money to start. He was given $1 million, turned it into billions. So unless you've done that, I don't want to hear it. So with billionaires in there that know how to cut costs and cut corners to make payroll, to make their businesses work, these people can do the same thing with the federal government to make government work. So this is, I keep telling my Democrat friends and my independent friends, sit back, shut up, just wait. I promise it's all going to work out. So let's see if this actually works. The executive order also instructs agency heads with assistance of Doge to build systems that centrally record approval for federally funded travel for conferences and other non-essential purposes. Once the systems are in place, agency employees will have to submit written justification for non-essential and conference travel expenses according to the text of the order, which is something that cities do right now anyway. Where my wife works, the city she works at, we went to a conference. We paid for all of my stuff. The city paid for all of her stuff. And we made sure that whenever we submitted everything, that they knew this is hers, this is mine. So this way we make sure that they weren't paying for anything that belonged to me. And that's how it should be. Too many people are too loosey-goosey with other people's money. So the move is the latest expansion of Doge's already extensive powers to review federal spending activities. Earlier this month, Doge sent an email to federal employees asking them to outline what they accomplished at work last week or face termination. Reportedly, Doge plans to feed the contents into an AI algorithm to determine whether someone's work is mission critical or not. Hopefully that actually happens, because we need something like that. We need to know, are these people actually doing work, or are they studying, circus fleas, which are invisible? Anyway, hopefully they're doing actual work. So this is something we really need. Thank goodness that Trump and Elon came up with this to be able to weed out all this waste, fraud, and abuse, because I've always worried about leaving trillions of dollars in debt to my kids to have to figure out how to pay off. And as Elon said the other day, if we don't get a handle on this now, the country's going to go bankrupt. And when you have a country that's bankrupt, it tends to go into anarchy. And then it tends to go into communism. We don't want that. So on Thursday, India was battling the H1N1 outbreak. So, with recent reports indicating the reemergence of the virus seen in several states and the detection of the virus in domestic cats for the first time, here's a more detailed look at the situation. Veterinary Authority in India has reported a reemergence of the H5N1 highly pathogenic avian influenza virus in several states. Outbreaks in poultry. There have been outbreaks of avian influenza, H5N1 and H5N8 in poultry in various states, including, I'm not going to try and say those, I'll try it, Maharashtra, Punjab, and Kerala. In 2021, India confirmed its first human case of H5N1 bird flu in a boy from Haryana. New findings in cats. Recently, 4 cases of the avian influenza were detected in 3 pet cats and a live bird in Shenandoah. Why are these words so hard? In this area, marking the first time this strain has been detected in domestic cats in India. Concerns about adaptability. The detection of the virus in cats raises concerns about its adaptability and potential impact on humans, as well as the need for enhanced surveillance in domestic poultry, wild birds, and mammals. It's like I spoke about the rabies virus before, how it is zoonotic, and also the coronavirus, how it was zoonotic and how it can pass onto animals. And when I was working in animal control at the time of the coronavirus, we were actually having to check people for their temperature, check to see if anybody in the house had had COVID when they were bringing animals in, and then if they had, we had to go and immediately take the animals for a bath so that we could wash any fomites off of them, so as to limit the spread of the virus. So, experts emphasize the importance of staying vigilant and prepared for potential human-to-human transmission, even though it is currently not efficient. Symptom mimicry. The symptoms of bird flu, particularly caused by strain H5N1, can vary but often mimic those of regular influenza, including fever, cough, fatigue, and muscle aches. Safe food practices. The World Health Organization advises cooking eggs until both the yolk and white are firm, and avoid dishes that contain raw or partially cooked eggs. Always a good thing to do. You really don't want to get sick from eating eggs. It's not fun. So, in local news, the Fort Worth murder plot foiled, fake kidnapping plan thwarted. What that is there was actually a kidnapping plot of Fort Worth police arrested 3: Estefana de la Rosa, 17, Cristian Hernandez Carrizales, 31, and Jesus Huitron, 23, for a murder plot over a social media dispute. De la Rosa faked a kidnapping to lure 2 targets, but police intervened. So, there we go. It was involving fake kidnapping to kill 2 people, thwarted by police. Fort Worth police made 3 arrests of the murder plot to kill 2 people over a social media dispute. Police say 17-year-old Estefana de la Rosa pretended to be kidnapped. They say she was working with 31-year-old Cristian Hernandez Carrizales and 23-year-old Jesus Huitron in a plan to coax the 2 targets out to ambush and kill them. Court documents show all 3 were behind bars and charged with conspiracy to commit murder. Police say 2 intended targets are safe. The Fort Worth police arrested the 3 people, including the 17-year-old, for an alleged murder plot over social media dispute. Police say the murder plot revolved around fake kidnapping, but detectives tell Fox 4 that things didn't go the way the 3 suspects planned. So, apparently, you're not supposed to try and murder people over social media. It's wrong. Police say they responded to a call about a possible kidnapping near Las Vegas Trail on I-30 in East Fort Worth near the end of January. I used to live there. The call came from 2 people who believed someone they knew had been kidnapped. When officers arrived on scene and they started to actually investigate, which they took very seriously, that's when the plan started to unravel, said Fort Worth police officer Lorenzo Burrell. Turns out it was just a ruse. According to investigators, 17-year-old Estefana de la Rosa only pretended to be kidnapped to coax the 2 targets to an undisclosed location and ambush them. Kids, don't get in with bad people, and when they ask you to do something like this, don't do it. The plan includes the purchase of a weapon and a plan to lure the victims so that they could actually kill them, said Burrell. It is so very calculated and very well thought out on the part of the suspects. Detectives say they were able to foil the plan before it was ever carried out, adding that De La Rosa was working in cahoots with 31-year-old Cristian Hernandez Carrizales and 23-year-old Jesus Huitron. Goodness, you're not supposed to do stupid stuff like this. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. This is a stupid game. Jail for the rest of your life is a stupid prize. Don't do this crap. Anyway, so I'm going to get rid of that. we're going to go over to X, and we're going to go ahead and see what all is on there so that y'all can see that. Let me go ahead and get to the right setting here so I can bring that up. And that's not it. There we go. Done. All right. So on Friday, February 28th, that's today, Trump and Zelensky clash in White House over Ukraine war. Trump and Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky Oval Office meeting turns into a shouting match over ending the Ukraine-Russia war. Trump with VP J.D. Vance berates Zelensky for disrespect and lack of gratitude, yelling, "You're gambling with World War III." Zelensky calls Putin a killer and rejecting a minerals deal. So that is accurate. I watched the meeting myself. It was broadcast by Fox News and a couple other different outlets. So as I watched it, Vladimir Zelensky was getting very irate with Trump and Vance, and basically wanting them to take his side in this whole thing. And both of them were saying, we don't want to take either side. We want to be neutral. We want to help you come to an agreement to stop this. This has gone on for far too long. We don't need this going on any further. Let's get this done. Okay, that's what they were trying to do, and Zelensky was not having it. And Trump finally told him, come back whenever you want peace, because obviously right now you don't. Right now you just want to win, and winning is off the table. Sorry about that. So, U.S. lawmakers were split. Representative Liz Cheney blasts Trump for abandoning principles. When is she not going to yell that at him? Lindsey Graham praises standing up for America. European leaders like Macron and Merz back Zelensky, fearing U.S. pullout on X would be disastrous for the war. So, in gaming news, because I do believe we're right about at 60 minutes. These I didn't actually vet, so let's go ahead and find. Let's see what happened in gaming this last week. So, last week in gaming saw a mix of announcements, releases, and industry news, including the launch of Monster Hunter Wilds. That's supposed to be a very good game. A price cut for PlayStation VR 2 and potential strike by video game performers. So, they're going to have like an actor strike. Oh, cool. Here's a more detailed look at some of the key events. When it comes to strikes, when it comes to actors, I don't think that's a very good idea anymore, especially with AI being able to go in and copy voices and all that good stuff. Probably not a smart move on their part, but strikes are rarely a smart move. It's really just a way to get more money. Monster Hunter Wilds. Capcom's newest installment of Monster Hunter series launched with mixed reviews on Steam due to performance issues. I could see that as a bad thing, but it also could just be because people so waited for it that it's kind of like with the Miley Cyrus ticket thing. I believe it was Miley. Anyway, with the whole ticket thing that happened last year, the year before, where Ticketmaster service just crashed. That can sorry, it was Taylor Swift. I have girls, but they're adults now, so I don't really talk about stuff like that with them anymore. Okay, the IGN Fan Fest event featured reveals like Atomfall, Brawlhalla versus Destiny 2 or X Destiny 2 collaboration, and a new vision of cyberpunk Japan in Blade Runner Tokyo Nemesis. The First Descendant, a new update teaser trailer was released for the game. Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. The game is celebrating its 1.5 year anniversary with a new event trailer starting March 6th. Catan Masterpiece Series official upgrades to the Catan board game are available to back on Kickstarter. That's cool. So Catan is something that's been out for years, and now they're actually expanding it. So that's good. So let's go ahead and we're going to go to NBC Tech News, and let's go ahead and see what they have to say. So let's make sure that it is recent as soon as this loads. Sorry, I'm filming this on a potato with a screen. So it can be a little bit slow from time to time, but we'll get there. How Hamlet came to Grand Theft Auto. Interesting. Musk riles up a new corner of the internet. Gamers. Nintendo offers brief look at the new Switch 2 console. That is going to be pretty interesting. We're looking forward to that dropping. FTC refunds Fortnite players $72 million, says Epic Games tricked gamers into purchases. Let's look into that one. Let's go ahead and look into that, because that's big. That's huge. It's huge, as Trump would say. Okay. So, more than 600,000 players of Fortnite will start to receive refunds after federal regulations said Epic Games, the developer behind the popular game, tricked people into making unwanted purchases. The FTC announced Monday that it is sending more than $72 million to impacted players in the U.S., with additional refunds to be distributed at a later date. The average player is about average payment is about $114 per player, according to the agency. The news comes 2 years after the FTC ordered the North Carolina-based Epic Games to pay a total of $520 million to settle allegations that it collected personal data from children without first obtaining the consent of a parent or guardian. As part of the settlement, Epic Games neither confirmed nor denied the allegations, though at the time it agreed to overhaul its privacy policies and chat and text functions, as well as reconfigure how it charges game users. A spokesperson for the developer did not immediately respond to a request for comment on Tuesday. The FTC alleged that Fortnite's counterintuitive, inconsistent, and confusing button configuration led players of all ages to incur unwanted charges based on the press of a single button, the agency said in its release Monday. For example, players could be charged while attempting to wake the game from sleep mode, while the game was in a loading screen, or by pressing an adjacent button while attempting simply to prevent an item or preview an item. Fortnite, a battle royale game that launched in 2017, allows players to play on a team or solo as they try to pick one another off until they're the last team or player standing. Epic Games does not particularly share player statistics, but Active Player, a game statistics website, estimates there are currently 30 million active players a day. The FTC said the eligible consumers can submit a claim online. The deadline is January 10th. Well, that's a little bit in the past there, isn't it? Oh, this is from December 10th. This is why I'm not very happy with AI right now. Like I said earlier, I spent several hours today telling Grok, sorry, that wasn't right. So let's go ahead and come up here, and we'll go to here. Inox Longevity Conference was from November last year. Replace it with a story about the $5,000 Doge dividend, please. You're correct. The Inox Longevity Conference I referenced for Saturday, February 25th, is based on outdated info from WebID 17, which actually ties to a November 24th event in Miami, not February 2025. My apologies for the mix-up. I'll replace it with the story about the $5,000 Doge dividend, which was solid footing in the search results. So be careful whenever you are using AI, because even the latest and greatest, which is Grok 3, as you can see here, it is the beta form, can be wrong. Grok 2 was actually a lot more accurate 2 weeks ago when I did this with that. So hopefully Elon can get this fixed up and we'll be good to go there. So due to the interruption earlier, unfortunately, I'm not sure how long we've been recording and how long it's been going. Hopefully we're around 69 minutes. But I wanted to go ahead and tell you now, this has been 69 Minute News. My name is Mark. I appreciate you watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Feel free, please, if I did get something wrong, call me out for it so we can go ahead and discuss that in the comments. If If you have any questions, I'm at 69 Minutes Newscast on YouTube, Facebook, X. Yeah, I think that's it. YouTube, Facebook, X. Oh, and let me pull it up here. Rumble. That's it. That's the last one. Also on Rumble. So, any of those platforms you want to look me up on, call me out if I did mess something up, or just shoot a comment, say hi, whatever. Let me know, and let me know if this is better than the last newscast. And if you want to see shorter stuff like I did with the Constitution week and a half ago, if you want to see stuff like that as well, let me know, and we can start working on stuff like that too. But for now, like I said, my name is Mark, and this is 69 Minute Newscast signing out. Have a blessed week.